Before we get into the issues, let's talk about, give us a broad overview of how big the IT BPM sector is in the Philippines. We took a graphic from your report. How much revenue, how many jobs are we looking at?
You know, over the past 2 decades, we've grown at a very impressive trajectory. And I'm happy to report that this year we will grow 7% in jobs. We will end 2024 with 1.82 million Filipinos employed directly by the industry and generating export revenue of $38 billion US dollars.
That's for 1 year alone.
That's for 2024.
You did say, though, that you expect more modest growth in revenues for 2025, and that's a bit scary since we know that the middle class is heavily anchored on this sector.
Not so
What gives?
scary,
Okay.
considering that we're coming off a relatively big base. We are already at 8.5% of GDP. So when you're coming from a big base, the percentage growth will definitely be more modest. But the other reason for that is that, you know, with recession globally potentially happening, there might be a more modest growth in global volume.
Okay.
But having said that, we have always outpaced global growth rates in IT BPM. For example, India grew 3.5% the past 2 years. The Philippines doubles that at 7%. So I think competitively, we're still more than holding our own. In
India
terms
is
of
still
market
the
share.
#1 offshoring center in the
Yes,
world.
primarily because of their bigger population.
We're still #2.
A solid number 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I remember a time when Reg and I were together in a show many, many years ago. We were talking to the then head of IBPAP, and you guys were gunning to be 15% of GDP to equal OFW remittances. Whatever happened to that? Where are we at vis-a-vis OFW remittances?
Well, you know, I think...
or did we just abandon that whole...
Well, no, at least for me, I don't view the OFWs as some kind of competition.
Not really a competition, but...
I mean, they are heroes on their own right. But I'd like to focus more on the other heroes that are not as talked about as OFWs. I call them the digital Filipino workers. Call it DFWs, who have been, you know, the real pathway to the middle class for this country. Because we are all here generating as much revenue as the OFWs.
That's exactly the whole batting point of the sector, right? But you also mentioned critical threats, this skills gap we were talking about. I also read in the papers that you just met with Education's Secretary Angara to talk about these skills gaps so that you guys can go hand in hand and provide. Oh, how did that conversation go? First off, thank you. I guess you donated some computers as well to the DepEd. But what did you and the Secretary talk about?
We talked about 3 asks for the industry. We kept it short. Not in any order, but we talked to him about bringing back English as a medium of instruction. Because it is the language of business globally. And while we have superior communication skills, we've noticed that there has been some slippage in the quality of English communication, comprehension, and that also affects critical thinking. So whatever aspect of IT BPM you are, you need those fundamental soft skills. Whether you're doing banking, financial services, or healthcare, or even engineering, you will need those core skills. Now, the other bucket will be specific domain skills because our industry has matured and diversified over the past decades. No longer do we just take the phone and answer simple queries. We are actually providing very complex level of work, including care management for patients in hospitals in the U.S.
So it's evolving and evolving because of also the acknowledgement of the skill set of Filipinos. But I was wondering if artificial intelligence also played a huge factor in the slowdown of the growth. And when you say there is a talent and skills gap, does it mean that we are underskilled? And how are we underskilled?
I mean, that's the all-important question. This industry was founded on the bedrock of Filipino talent. And that is solid. We are a world capital in in this space. But to execute and deliver the additional 1 million jobs that the IBPAP's roadmap promises to deliver, that's the most aggressive scenario, we really need to focus on the talent supply. And the talent skills mismatch is a serious one. And again, I go back to those two buckets. The soft skills bucket,
Yeah.
and then those specific domain skills. I'm not saying everyone study AI, everyone study computer science. No, study what you want, but be good at it, because there will be a job for you in IT BPM, because our industry offers a very diverse set of
What is in
career
demand
paths
now? What kind of skills? Like domain skills?
across the board.
You mentioned data
Like
analytics, I think
for
programming.
example.
Well, those are the specific skills gaps, but you will need analytics in a variety
Anywhere.
of different functions. We see growth in healthcare, we see growth in banking and financial services, and also the more traditional areas like hospitality and other kinds of customer experiences. But yes, the Filipinos are good in.
I remember in New York there are restaurants
Yes.
with Filipino cashiers. So is that part of the BPO
Well, it's
industry
part
as well?
it's part of
Parang-
the overall space, but there is also a job hierarchy in our industry, and so I'd like to see it as a hierarchy based on level of complexity.
Yeah.
Now we are all aspiring for the higher complexity and higher value-added services.
Because those can't be taken over by AI.
Those are a little bit harder.
Not as vulnerable.
I want to go back to Gretchen's question on AI. The AI phenomenon will certainly affect the future of work. In fact, we're living in that future already. But we like to see AI as a co-worker of our Filipino agent.
You guys also said AI cut jobs by 8% in surveyed
Hold on.
firms. So can you
Okay,
put that
let
in
me
the
explain
context?
that. We did a survey a few months ago of our members. Now, all the respondents, 8% did say that there was a reduction in job roles due to AI. But interestingly, 13% reported an increase in the number of roles due to AI, which matches the 7% growth that we're going to report. So it's still a little bit early to say that jobs will be disrupted. Certainly, there will be some jobs that will be affected. Simple, routine, automatable, repetitive tasks that should be replaced so that those people can be reskilled. to
Those
do
new
more.
roles are also related to AI? Were created because of
Yes.
the technology?
Yes, because 67% of our members are implementing AI trials and use cases. So, the industry is not waiting for AI to happen.
Yes.
We're taking the lead.
Right. So we understand the general concept of it, which is it will perhaps abolish low-level, low-value jobs, but create a lot more jobs in the higher value segment. But
Yes.
what is number one? Is the government laying the right foundations to make sure that we capture a bigger part of the market?
It's
And number two, what does the other side of that coin is? What does the private sector need to make sure? Okay, we're in the midst of a global, shift once more, right? In much the same way when the iPhones came into existence, when smartphones came into existence, it triggered this whole a drastic change in the way people worked. So now we're on the precipice of another shift. How do we make sure that we capture that and we get ahead of that trend?
Stakeholders will have to work together. So this will need the private sector, who have carried the burden
Right.
so far in talent development, and when we onboard new hires, we train them for 6 to 8 weeks before they go into production, on average. But it will also require the uplifting of the talent supply that are coming, with the 700,000 university graduates every year. And also some senior high school students who may want to enter the workforce without going to college. And we're good with that too.
I did
do we
read that.
need-
Is it true that you are working on hiring people or employees straight out of senior high
Many
school?
of our members are exploring that and have begun doing that. And the recommendation, going back to our conversation with Secretary Angara, we asked him to increase the immersion hours or on-the-job training hours for senior high school students from a minimum of 80 to raising the minimum to 640
So they can be
hours.
employable, directly
Yes.
employable.
That might make a lot of
Okay.
people unhappy, a lot of students unhappy. Like, what? I have to do twice more the number of hours?
Well, they will
Pero
be getting
diretso na.
employment.
But they
Well,
won't
depends how you
have
look
to
at
go
it.
to college.
Depends how you look
Is
at
that
it.
paid internships?
Oh, well, yes, there is.
Internships.
But
But the big
yeah.
prize is virtually guaranteed employment.
Right, I get it, but upskilling is a medium to long-term plan. It doesn't happen overnight. What else does the industry need from the government in order to make things happen?
Upskilling is a complex process. There are some early interventions,
Right.
maybe shorter-term interventions. And then there's the longer term, how do we fix and upgrade our educational system?
Yes.
But we have a target of adding 1 million jobs. We need all of those interventions. I like to think of it as maybe adding like a finishing school type process before university
Oh, I like that.
students
Finishing
graduate.
school for BPOs.
Yes, we don't need 2 years of
that's
training.
That's a
That's
good idea.
specific. One
specifically,
semester.
parang TESDA pang BPO.
Correct.
I think that's a great idea.
It's very specific,
Yeah.
skill specific.
I'm very, very curious because you highlighted 5 challenges for the IT BPO industry. The others, we've already known them. High cost to entry,
doing business.
ease of doing business, competition, talent and skills gap. But the other one, which is cybersecurity, when we talk to cybersecurity experts, they keep saying this is a worldwide problem. Help us understand what investors look at in terms of assessing whether they set up shop here, and how do we work on this side of things?
Our industry handles a lot of sensitive customer data. And so that data has to be protected more than adequately against ransomware, hacks, and other kinds of, activities of cyber criminals. And
malicious
that's why this
intention.
is such an important topic. And that's why we view it as a risk.
So legislation.
But when you
also.
do that, do you take it upon yourselves as the companies directly involved, or do you rely on the government?
Well, I think
Or is it both?
again, it's going to be all stakeholders. The government has to have some standards in terms of minimum standards of quality of cybersecurity protection to enforce that.
Culpability, accountability.
And then, but ultimately, in our industry, we have to ensure that whatever customer data we handle has to be protected from these kinds of cyber
I also made a
attacks.
note of this because I'm so curious. Are there still new companies wanting to locate here in the Philippines, knowing all the 5 things that Gretchen just mentioned, the issues with red tape, et cetera, et cetera?
I think our position as the world number 2 in this space is,
Speaks
is
for
very
itself.
strong. We are a capital, and I think we will always be attractive. But that is primarily because of the Filipino talent, which is why we need to protect that, because we are the youngest country in Asia, 25 years average age. That makes us very attractive. We are the only destination alongside India that can scale because we have the demographic advantage. There are competitors, but they cannot scale like the Philippines and India.
We're just flashing your
And we need to
graphic
we
there.
need to make sure the talent keeps on evolving with
Right.
the times.
Although I think those numbers are not accurate anymore because you said $38 billion in revenue this year, right? So
Yes, those are 2023 numbers.
Oh,
but
I see.
Add 7% to all those numbers, and that will take
that's
you
pretty
to 24.
fantastic.
It is.
Yes.
Jumping on Sean's question, I know IBPAP, the group, has been conducting roadshows overseas, markets in Asia, Australia, the UK. What do you hear on the ground? What are they telling you about?
I'm happy to say there's continued interest wherever we go. And I think that's why I highlighted those headwinds, because I want to protect our renown
Yeah.
and maintain our market share. But we're in a very good position. And as long as we take care of that talent skills gap, we should be in good shape regardless of those headwinds moving ahead.
We look
What
forward
industries?
to a specialized school
Yeah.
Yes, well,
before step down.
those interventions are going to be very important.
Yeah.
And given our history, the Filipino talent is very agile,
Yeah.
is resilient, and is capable of learning, unlearning, and relearning new skills. So I think we just need to make those investments in the skills.
But what industries are looking to offshore here? What other industries?
70% of our current business is from North America.
Correct. Yeah.
But increasingly, the EU countries, UK, Australia, are showing some interest, and so we want to leverage that. In terms of sector, banking, financial services,
Still
and
banking,
healthcare
yeah.
are the most promising.
Okay.
So we're going to see some growth there.
Wherever the world is going more digital, that's probably where they would need.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Well, what's interesting, and not a lot of people know this, but only 30% of total work that can be offshored has been offshore.
Oh, really?
So there's another 70%
The market is
of
not
work.
saturated?
No. There are more contact center agents in the US than elsewhere.
This one, Jack, I wanted to ask you. This might be like a super left field, but I did catch a report where you guys were, where it said that you guys in the IT BPM industry are still waiting for some clarity on work flexibility. Are you talking about a more legislated kind of like hybrid or flexible work schedule for our contact center agents?
Work flexibility is not unique to IT BPM.
Yeah.
I think it applies to everyone. Maybe not yourself.
But it's really unique in the Philippines. I think traditionally, Filipino employers are kind of opposed, but then traffic is so bad, etc., etc.
It's a complex and sensitive issue.
It is.
But it's important. If you listen to the voice of the employee, it's pretty damn important. But there's no one magic number for all employees of our industry because we have many different sectors.
Yes.
We have observed a gradual uptick towards returning to on-site. But I think imposing that, making it a rule, is not good if you're listening to the employee. It's all about flexibility.
That's true.
And it really varies depending on what the employer wants and depending on what the customer wants. You have to remember, we're handling a lot of sensitive data. And data is better protected in on-site operations. So it's a bit of a balancing
debatable,
act.
yeah.
Rather than do everything
So
online.
bottom line, there will be more jobs in the coming years?
Well, the demand continues strong. I mean, I meet with investors almost every day, both prospective and those who are already here. If we can meet the talent supply skills gap, we will be in good shape and continue to be a world leader in this space.